All right, welcome to step two. Now you've identified, the prospect that you're going to go after. You've got a massive list of tons and tons of people to start up multiple conversations with, so you can just kind of block out, an hour, 4 hours of time, and really just kind of get this up and go. So for part two is where you actually dig into the conversation. This is where you pique their interest, you build rapport, and you eventually kind of go into a bit of your presentation, which currently right now is going to be through you talking. And if you need to, you can bring in Joe or I while we're in this pre-launch stage to come in for the close and help you kind of make those $3,000 sales for you. Where there's videos and stuff that will make this a lot more seamless. Okay. So for this, I've actually brought on Joe. Joe, if you don't know too much about him, he's kind of a badass. He's a lawyer with an MBA. He's a business analyst. He's done tons and tons of interrogation and I guess he did headhunting for was a legal recruiting agency in Manhattan. So when it comes to having a conversation with somebody that ultimately ends up in the direction that you want it to go, which is money in your pocket, there's really nobody better than Joe. So Joe, if you can come on out here, I think you got the focus. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Brian, that was a really outstanding intro that you've done with that training on the hunting that you did. And frankly, that does remind me of back in the day when I was in Manhattan, and I actually owned the legal recruiting agency. I've never worked for someone else on that. And it was billion-dollar law firms that would hire me. And so part of my skill set was to go in, infiltrate a major law firm, find a $10 million earning lawyer, and then go through this process that I'm about to teach you guys in how you take that person and you describe a new opportunity for them, and then you connect the dots. So essentially, that's what headhunting is. A lot of people just don't know that, but it happens all the time. I mean, a lot of you guys already know about fantasy football, right? I mean, the draft. And what is that whole season all about? That's headhunting. When they start trading players, that's headhunting. And so what's it all based upon is the real question. There's always a dialogue going in the background. So what Brian and I have put together here, frankly, it's amazing. And it should excite you. You should fall off your seat when you actually grasp the potential of what we really are building here. Fantasy football is no comparison to what we can do. And it just boils down to the fact that fantasy football taps into a fan base. And so that's also going to be the platform that you're going to use in your questioning. Now, Brian brought out the word interrogation for a reason, because the reality is when you're a former law enforcement or military official that wants that secret piece of information so you can influence somebody to give you something more. I mean, we say it in jest, and we say it lightly, but the truth is when you're a consultative sales type of person, when you're a person that's going out there and you're trying to influence a mass amount of people or an individual, you really need to get in and connect on an emotional level. You need to understand what it is that they want, what they're striving for, and then how whatever it is that you have will help them solve that issue and build their life so that everybody can be happy in the end. So I'm going to now take you through a little map work of kind of what we laid out as a common pattern. Excuse me. Speaking of patterns, that's a pattern interrupt. A common pattern of how this kind of question system has gone in play, and it's worked with great success. Now, I do it literally. I could go on Facebook, spend an hour, and probably have 2 people that are saying, I want in on this. And it's nothing that's really difficult. It's just a matter of going through the process. So you're either going to make the decision to be very successful at this and help these football players get out of that 80% broke situation, and in the process make that alliance as a fan with a player, and everybody elevate and become wealthy and very successful, or you're just going to kind of poke around at it, think it's interesting, and then not really get the benefit from it. So I'm going to urge you very strongly to not only pay attention to what I'm saying, but to actually do it. Take this information, and use it, because I can show you firsthand from my own personal success, from the success that I've witnessed Brian have over the last year, that if you do these things, you will have success. Now, it's going to be different. In another 6 months or so, this pattern of questions is going to change, because in that time frame, your own success level is going to be different, and you're not going to need this type of foundation anymore, because your foundation will be like mine or will be like Brian's. You'll have success. You'll have people that you've personally brought into the business, and then they're going to be talking for you, we're going to be talking for you, and we all grow at the same time. So with that said, I'm just going to jump right into the questions and why you ask them. And you have to realize some of this is abstract. Some of this you're going to have to think about, but it's the principle that makes sense. And the easiest way to do it is I'm going to call up a document here, and Brian is going to chime in if I miss anything, because Brian is also an expert at this, and it's not just my creation. We created this as a team. You're now a member of our team, and we care very much about your success as much as our own. So here's what you want to do. Presuming that you've already followed Brian's advice and you've gone onto Facebook and you've hunted for the right prospecting candidate, what you're going to get into is probably about a 10-minute texting conversation that you use over the internet on Facebook. And of course, you can also use this in any other modality. You can pick up the phone and have the same conversation. You can, go down to your fantasy football league on a Wednesday night when you all get together and have this conversation with a group of 20 guys. But in any case, however you choose to do it, follow this structure. So here's what you're going to do. Step number one. You want to go out there and you're going to find that one thing that you can joke about or relate to or have an interesting, authentic conversation with them, creating rapport. Now, that just sounded like a highly academic thing, right? But it boils down to this. You go on a Facebook fan page, you see somebody, you see their wall, you see what they're talking about, you see their pictures, you see their family. If they've got a white dog and you've got a white dog, immediately you can connect with them and say, hey, I saw your white dog, look just like mine. What kind of dog is yours? That is something that the person is going to say, oh, okay, this person has something in common with me. Another thing might be, it might be a former person, a former vet, a Marine that came back from Afghanistan or Iraq and he's missing a leg. And you see, all of the sideline information about that all over his wall, and you reach out, you thank him for serving his country. If you're also a vet, you connect that way. And whatever it is, you establish rapport, you do it in a respectful way, not a scammy, spammy way. And so you have a little chit-chat right there. So then what's going to happen next is you're going to step into, this rapport that's going to take you into a longer conversation, like you're just two guys out for a drive in a car, walking up the street, tossing around a basketball, whatever you're doing, and you're having a conversation. And then it's going to shift into actually finding out what they know about football and what their connection is. It might be something like they were a college football player. They might have a favorite, team, or something of that nature, and then you're either going to know something about it and be able to carry the conversation there, or you're going to have them tell you something about it. And when that happens, then all of a sudden they're engaging with you, and that is actually the classical definition of what rapport is. And folks, you're going to have to ignore that. Speaking of white dogs, I'm here in my basement, and my dog is demanding my attention, and you probably just heard her barking. My apologies. So anyway, as you get talking with them about fantasy football, remember your end goal is you're going to give them the smoking gun of things that is going to create your success with them, and that's going to be your football connection and the business that you're going to start. So what you do is you shift the conversation back to what it is that they've done regarding football. Have they joined fantasy football? Are they currently a member? And if so, what have they done and why? And then you're going to take it to the next level of how much money have they spent watching football? Have they gone into actually going to a regular game? Do they have season tickets? Do they have a family box seat? I mean, there are a lot of people like in Boston or LA that, they literally have season tickets in the box. Those types of people, they're beyond fantasy footballs. They're complete fanatics. And their family has spent thousands of dollars on football. So this is very important information because that's something that they may be doing to kind of, overlook something in their life that may be more bleak. And really what you're doing is you're looking for things that they're interested in that relate to fantasy football, and then you want to cross a bridge into their personal life. If they're in a job where they sit in a cubicle all day, did they go to, are they an Aggie from a school in Texas and, they came out of school and then they wound up doing something that they just weren't satisfied doing and they knew that they'd never make more than $100,000 a year doing it, and it was just really frustrating. These kind of things people are happy to talk about because if you have rapport with them and you start asking questions in what we as lawyers or trial attorneys would say in a suggestive manner or leading questions. In other words, you say, so you got a job as an insurance adjuster. That's got to suck because I know a bunch of insurance adjusters and they all sit behind a cubicle, and I hear that the average salary is between $40,000 and $70,000 a year. And I can tell you firsthand that that wouldn't help me survive in my life with my family. And when you ask a question that way, kind of leading, then it's eliciting a response for them that's going to also trigger an emotion that they have. And that emotion may be, oh yeah, you're right, I do hate my job. And then you slide in, you layer it on, or using some other language, you might agitate it a little bit or remind them of how bad it sucks by saying, so what do you do for 8 hours in that cubicle? Do you spend 6 hours making fantasy football bets? Do you go in and you watch all the stuff on fantasy football players, and do you start sending emails? Do you find yourself distracted at work? Questions like this then also trigger those more emotions, and it gets them actually visualizing that pattern of what they've been doing for the last 5 years in their life. And so this is the point where you get to shift and be their hero and be their best friend and be that leader in their life that they didn't expect this day. Because let me remind you that the way they came into contact with you right now is you reached out to them on Facebook, and in all likelihood they are at work and they're trying to ignore their job. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, listen, man, I got something I want to share with you. Pay attention. Don't get up and leave your cubicle. You got to see this. And this is where you take from the list of social proofs that we'll give you and the various ones that you can create over time on your own, and you share a picture of, say, Brian and Willie Smith when Brian was flown down to North Carolina by Willie, and all of a sudden, Brian, now a guy from Texas who's probably one of the leading online entrepreneurs out here that knows how to develop traffic resources and use YouTube and use video marketing and create blogs and so forth. And you use Brian or me or any of these things, and you say, these are my great friends Brian, Joe, and this is Willie Smith. And when they look at that picture, you want to wait for them to respond before you tell them what it's all about. Because their response is important. Remember, you're leading this conversation. And what's going to happen is they're probably going to say, wow, that's cool. How did you get that? Where's that from? And that is your platform to then discuss what's next. So as they see that, you want to then let their excitement build. And the way you let their excitement build is you start to talk about the football players. And you say, did you know that 80% of NFL players go broke within 2 years of their last game? And then some people are going to know that, and some people aren't going to know that. And then you say, yeah, it's awful. And I learned this because Brian and Joe had this material out that I found, and Brian was demonstrating how, these various football players like Vince Young or Rod Streeter or whoever has so many searches for their name on the internet, but the NFL or ESPN or some other organization or corporate organization is benefiting from that. Now, how does that benefit an individual football player? It doesn't. And so that was shocking information. And then I learned through Brian and Joe that guess what? The internet has a way to develop a business model that these players can connect with their assets, and their assets is not their contract. And Joe, being a high-end, completely top-level business analyst, was able to discover the fact that what actually the football players have available is 200 million fans, and of those 200 million fans, a lot of them, 28 million of them to be precise, are fantasy football players. And so going back to what you said to me earlier in this conversation, because you want to relate them back to their personal life, when you told me that you personally have spent $500 on jerseys, you personally have spent $1,000 in the last 2 years going to a game, you personally have demonstrated such loyalty in football to escape from your pressures of work and your life, that it's a valuable market and that there's an asset there to be tapped into, that if you have the proper business model in place, the proper systems in place, which, by the way, you're going to have a chance to have today, but you're going to have a small chance because the window of opportunity is short. So what we're going to do is we have developed, through Brian and Joe, a system that we call the Home Business Touchdown, and you want them to be able to benefit from it. And they can do it part-time while they're stuck in their cubicle, and all they have to do is continue to do what they do right now, which is fantasize about football players. But here's the difference. Unlike fantasy football or FanDuel or that group of fantasy football business organizations that have generated $90 billion, our opportunity actually engages with players. With players. I will emphasize, and you will emphasize, with players. And then you stop, and then you say, as in, look at this picture. And then you share yet another piece of social, proof of, say, potentially there's a video where I attempt to tackle Willie Smith. And we'll have that developed for you. As well as there's a video where Brian is walking through East Carolina University actually creating videos with Willie Smith. So we're going to bring that information in there, and then we're also going to describe how in the future our top earners in this business are going to also have the absolute opportunity to engage with the players, be in the videos, go to VIP events, but they have to qualify. And so that's when you shift back into saying, and you want them to engage, so you want to ask them questions. And you're doing it in a leading way where you say, how many people do you know personally that love football? And then you let them respond. And then you say, how many people do you know personally that have actual NFL players' cell phone numbers inside of their contact list? And then you say, how many people do you know personally that if they saw an NFL player walking into a restaurant with you would be pretty excited and would come up to you and would think of you as a celebrity with this guy just because you're there. So when you start asking them these questions, you're planting visualizations and seeds that when they then have an opportunity, that's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about spending money. They're not thinking about, oh, this isn't going to work for me. But instead, they're now thinking about what they can have. And then you remind them. So here's the slam dunk. Here's the smoking gun. You remind them, hey, man, you did fantasy football for the last 5 years, and you spent $5,000 playing fantasy football, and you never even got so much as an autograph out of it. I'm going to give you an opportunity that's only going to be available for the next 24 hours, that if you sign right now or within the next 24 hours, you're actually going to be part of the Home Business Touchdown. And as part of the Home Business Touchdown, you are going to be able to start earning an income of commissions earning an income of up to $3,000 in commissions on the front end, as well as be able to leverage the marketing value that the football brings to your business, as well as you become successful, you personally will be able to start blogging about these players. And you will learn not only from Brian, not only from myself, but also from the leaders that Brian and I associate with and borrow information from and develop training modules with. And that information is going to teach you how you personally will be able to use the Home Business Touchdown to generate traffic on the internet that you will then be able to convert into not only our $3,000 commissions on the front end, but also many, many other ways. And these football players are going to be grateful. They're going to be grateful for those of you that come in, because as you earn income, so will your partners, because we are partnering with actual NFL football players, and that's what you're going to demonstrate through your conversation and through the social proof that we'll continue to develop, continue to provide, but you have to start here. And then at some point around this time frame in the conversation, it's when you're going to close, and you're just going to remind them that you're the guy with a direct connection with an NFL player or players, and that they're not. And that if they would like that, then they have to consider stepping up and getting into this business opportunity with us. And then if they still have questions, you can either set up a conference call with Brian or Joe, or at some point you'll be able to direct them to various websites that Brian and I are continuously updating and upgrading. And depending on when you're learning this information, you'll be able to use those various materials. So when you have the materials, when you have the actual training, when you have the support, when you have the experience of watching Brian and I actually do a three-way call with an NFL player, by the way, and close them, it's kind of mind-altering, really, because that's when you actually recognize, holy cow, this really does work. These really are NFL players. They really do have this need. It's an urgent need. It's one that must have a solution, and we've provided the only one here. So the conversation shouldn't go anywhere else but this kind of pattern on this subject matter, and it should lead to, okay, so now that you've heard all of this and you're excited, how bad would you like to get involved and and be on the team with NFL players? And when they say really bad, because that's really how you ask the question. You don't say, you don't come out and you say, okay, I want you to spend such and such amount of money. Instead, you say, how bad do you want it? How much money would you spend for the opportunity to build a business with an NFL player? And then remind them, well, you started last year going to a game and you spent several $100s each game, which added up to $1,000. Just remember how many fans there are before you consider how much money you'd spend. And then you also say, just think about our personal conversation and how excited you got. And then ask them, how many people do you know that would be excited by this opportunity? How many people do you know that every week it's football night and they make it an event? They make it a tradition and they religiously watch football. Those people will be so excited at this opportunity that if you said it was $10,000, they'd be willing to do it. But you're going to say you're not going to spend $10,000. Instead, how much will you spend, because you're going to have this opportunity and we need to know where you're willing to start. And then when you start to see what kind of numbers they're playing with, a lot of people are just going to play with you and toy with you. You just break it down and you say, listen, if you want to earn a $3,000 commission, how difficult would it be for you to just slap a $5,000 business opportunity on your credit card, because that's what you can do. And I don't really want to get involved into, all of the details about that, because I had this opportunity. I got all in. I see how successful Brian and Joe are. I see the trail of success and the opportunity from the interactions with the players that they have. I've seen the videos with them, with the players, and I personally am looking forward to my first opportunity to fly out to San Diego or to fly down to Florida and to meet up with these football players and get in the next video. And by the way, if you get all in and you buy your business opportunity right now, this business opportunity with the player, you too will have the benefit, if you can afford it, to hop on a plane with Brian and Joe and myself and to meet up with one of the players and to actually create customized videos for you. How excited would that make your family to see you in a video with an NFL player doing business? Can you imagine sitting down on a beach somewhere in your sandals with your twill pants on with a cigar, drinking a beer and hanging out with C.J. Wilson or Willie Smith or Chris Baker or Dwayne Harris? You got yourself this type of opportunity, and that's really the image that you want to paint for them. You want it to be attractive. You want them to see that it's real, and you just remind them, these guys are people too, just like you and I. They have families. They need to make money. Their money train ends when their contract is over. And frankly, football players have it the worst. A lot of their contracts are based on bonuses, and if they don't perform, they don't get specific bonuses. And most of these guys get injured before their 4-year average even happens, because your average player only plays for 4 years. It's a very, very serious situation for football players. And as you describe this to your prospect, you want to continue to edify how smart and how successful and how capable and competent that Brian and Joe are, because they were the only two guys on the planet that were able to actually not just recruit normal, ordinary people, but they developed this foundation of a business by satisfying football players. I have personally seen, or I'm aware, that Joe and Brian spend weekly conversations with football players on their cell phones. They fly around the country. They hang out with these guys. And they have opened the door. They've rolled out the red carpet. They've put out the red velvet, runners for you to have the same opportunity. And the players are really, really excited by it. And so the one thing that we won't really touch on right now, which we'll share with you later when you're all in, is how not only are you going to be able to use this to bring in fantasy football fans, but how you personally may wind up with actual NFL players joining you, as in you making money from an NFL player directly. So that is the biggest bonus that will happen, and it's not going to happen just for anyone. If you want things to really take off and expand your level of success, you got to follow this pattern that I just laid out. You got to get all in, and then you got to run through this business and learn from it and be loyal to it and polish it, be proud of it. But for people that don't treat it properly, they will get ejected from our business, because this is all about taking care of celebrity football players. And we have so many interested people that want to have this opportunity that we're only going to share it with people that are willing, capable, and enthusiastic about doing it our way, the home business touchdown way. So that's going to be the end of my training. I'm going to bring Brian back in here right now, and I'm going to go back to the other screen. This image that you're looking at, Brian has done a terrific job at going through and making it proper for you. And you're going to have access to this. You're going to have access to more material, which if you're reading this or listening to this, you probably already do. But I just wanted to leave it at that. So I'm going to switch back, bring Brian back in, and hopefully I didn't go too long. But
I think,
Brian, you're on.
Okay, yeah. No, I just wanted to say that was an absolutely awesome job, Joe. I don't want to take up too much more time, guys. I think you guys have learned enough. We'll probably give you a couple more examples, maybe even some actual conversations. If I can convince Joe to do this, maybe some actual conversations, like a screen grab of him having a conversation from taking this exact process, everything you just learned, from finding the group of people, using the Facebook graph search, to opening up the conversation, building the rapport, taking them through that exact process that Joe just laid out for you, and result. Okay? Hopefully, maybe I can get some actual examples of that for y'all to read through. But in the meantime, right now, I just want you to take this information and go take action on it. Okay? Realize exactly what he said. He closes 80%. You're probably going to close 20%. This can be repaired in time, right? Those relationships aren't going to be absolutely destroyed if you get a no immediately. You just make a $3,000 sale. You come right back and said, "Hey, I just made $3,000 with this. You want to take another look at it? Let me get you on the phone with Brian and Joe. Let me introduce you to the founders." Right? So without further ado, take some action right now. Get all in. Take this training and actually apply it. Right? There's two types of people in this business: people that just love to listen and learn and soak it all up and never make any damn money, and people that actually take this, apply it, and make money. So go make some money. Go make some sales. And I'll see you guys at the next event.